Okay, welcome back to Benkyo. Today we'll be looking at Junzuki notsukomi and its progression through Kette Junzuki notsukomi and also Nagashizuki and also Maigeri Nagashizuki. So as ever, if what I'm doing here today, your instructor doesn't agree with it and wants to do it a various other way, then respect them and please go along with their thoughts and their recommendations. Junzuki notsukomi and Gyakuzuki notsukomi, it's quite unique to the Wado-Ryu system. I'm sure there's people out there that'll say, no, it's not just Wado-Ryu, it's this style of karate, it's that style of karate. But to me, it's more of a unique techniques to Wado-Ryu. So what I'll do is I'll run through a couple of Junzuki notsukomis, and then what we'll do is break it down. So some of you out there who are not familiar with the Wado-Ryu system, this looks like a Junzuki Jodan, but it's totally different from Junzuki Jodan. Sure, you are Zuki into the face or to the head, but it can be done Gidan, it can be done Chudan, but in general it's just done to Jodan. So what we'll do is talk about the stance and the body posture. That's what makes it totally different from a Junzuki Jodan. So, right from the beginning, when you take your yoi, it shouldn't be too wide. We've talked about this before. Okay? But really it should be just 1 foot width. So, if you think about that as the base of a triangle, and my senju-sen, we want to be taking whichever foot you're taking forward, you want to take that onto your center. And let your back foot turn. To turn your hip, to turn your body, to turn your head, to turn your shoulders. So first of all, try just taking each foot to the center and turn. Forward and turn. Forward and turn. Okay, when you take the foot forward, try not to have it on the inside edge. Really, that's not the center of your foot. Your center of the foot basically comes through the next toe. Here. Yeah, not inside the foot. So try not to mistake it for anything to do with seishan kata. Yeah. So here. Right, the back foot, you need to turn it to almost 45 degrees. And the way to check is just coming back into yoi. And your foot shouldn't have to move. So to try it, just keep on going forward, turn, back. Forward, turn, back. Forward, turn, back, forward, turn, back, and then try it on the other foot going round. So you're getting the correct foot position from behind and the correct foot position on the front. Main thing for the front one is it's an anchorage point. It's your anchorage point for all the weight that's going through it. If that's slightly off, then your weight diverts either to the inside or the outside. And that's not good for the resultant of the punch, of the Zuki. Your back foot actually dictates or helps the body to rotate naturally. If it's still pointing forward, your hip's not being able to rotate. So the back foot rotates and helps your hip to go forward and your body to go forward. So the next thing to consider is, which makes it totally different from a Junzuki Jodan, is your hip position. And this is to do with your hip. It's not to do with your back, with your spine. It's to do with your hip position. So the punch is not this. This is a Junzuki Jodan, but incorrect foot position. Yeah? We've talked about the stance. Now from here, this should be pulled in to take it forward. Different styles have different positions for this arm. Here or here. Yeah? So, hip. This is important. I'll do an example of the reason why soon. So, try and get this hip to be pulled back to project this arm forward. I try and link things together. And Junzuki notsukomi is, in my mind, is linked to shito. So, pulling this hip back is the same as pulling your hip back when you're doing shito. It's only your back foot and your front foot. Here, lift the heel slightly, pull back, but you have this same hip pulled back. And we've talked about shito before, taking it from an uki to an uchi. And it's just this body posture which gives you that attacking move rather than just letting it go and it's an uki. It's only a small pull in, but it makes a big difference to the actual technique. Obviously, you need to think about your hikite, your body position, and also your head position. So, the height is here, same height as your eyes are off the floor. It's not politically correct, but it's almost looking through the sights of a gun, the groove. Yeah, here. Next thing is get your head down, not here. You're giving them a big target. Your head wants to be down. Almost this part of the arm is actually covering your head. Boxers get their head down and punch. So similar. Get your head down, not sticking up. It's going to get shot off. Down here. Yeah, through. So, your head position is important. Natural with your shoulders. Not turned, but just relaxed. Believe it or not, you can move your eyes in their sockets to look forward. You don't have to turn your head here. And your forehead or your head forward, not here. If you get punched, you'll get punched in the nose or the eyes or the mouth. Just relaxing your head down, then it's not the vulnerable eyes, nose, mouth, but it's your head. So think about where your head position is. And also not leaning your head over. That puts a strain on your back. Get to a comfortable position for it. After all, you should be working with your body, not against it. So if you feel any unnecessary pressure anywhere, the only thing you should feel is this hip pulling back to give you that projection. When you're going through, you have to think about where your center of gravity is. Here, going forward. Move should start from here, then through, holding it back to get the torsion. Yeah, then using your back foot to release it through. Again, relaxed, body's turned, goes the back hip. This is how it would be naturally. Natural, because you've taken it back slightly, 1 foot width. Yeah, through, bend, hold this back, then turning the foot. So turning the foot and doing the hikite. So you've got one extremity and the other extremity. So here, bending, hold the hip back, through, turn. So again, coming back to the base of the triangle, center. Yeah, you know if you've overcooked it by doing this, your foot's at the back. Should not be at the back. Should be in line. So if you pulled it back, not heels at the back. Yoi, senju-sen, forward, turn. Check. Center, forward, pull the hip back. Check. Zuki, the arm, talking about this one. Forget this one at the moment, just tucking it out of the way. So as your eyes are level with the in between your two knuckles, head down. Body position, natural with this turn. Head's natural with your shoulders, not trying to crease it over. Here. Okay, so what I'd like to do with the help of Kash here and his nice crisp white suit, right, we'll be going through a traditional Jodan Ippon-ni, which many of you out there doing the Wado-Ryu system still use. Okay, maybe you've never thought about this, or maybe you already utilize this, but it's fundamental to your Junzuki notsukomi and your understanding of senju-sen. And also, the word tsukami means to pierce, yeah, to drive through. So I'm hoping that this will demonstrate my rationale that I used for when I perform Junzuki notsukomi. I always think of this technique. And it's about arm position and body position and working off the senju-sen. So, back again. Yoi. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be moving back and then turn. Turn the body out of the way. Off the senju-sen. Turned because of shizentoi. Again. Here. To cut through and in. Not this. Once more. Over the top. Should be, as the Zuki's coming, I should be cutting through, keeping the elbow down. And here. If it's Junzuki, just a Junzuki Jodan, I'd be stepping back, punching here. This is why this is important. This pulling hip back and pushing forward. Once more. Here. Cut through. It's not an additional move. It's not an additional move. It's actually cutting through. And I'm not losing any distance. Watch once more. I've not lost any distance. I'm trying to keep my body where it was. Small. I can try and leave my body here, but turn it. The more I can keep my body forward, the more penetration I'm going to get with the Zuki. Small. So, here. Notsukomi. Cutting through. And out. One of the fundamental that you can start to introduce here is sen no sen. Because I need to see which punch, which Zuki is coming. As soon as that goes, then I know that I need to attack. So, here. If I leave it too late, the punch has gone in. Luckily, because I'm turning my body, Kash shouldn't be able to hit me. But you never know. So, back and turn. But keep my body forward. Not going back. I'm not going to lose any ground. As soon as I start going back, he's onto me again. So when we've done Junzuki notsukomi, the next progression is Nagashizuki. So we're not actually using the rigid stance, we are progressing it into more of a free form, usable when you're sparring. So Nagashizuki. Shizentai. When you go for Nagashizuki or Tomokomizuki, do not lead with the head. Obvious reasons. But from your hip and bringing your arms up. Same principle. Arms coming up, hip going forward, not the head. You put the hip in when you're doing the Zuki. When you're coming back, you try and keep this length. Don't bring this foot up. And then pull back. There are, I know, maybe 3 or 4 different ways to use this other arm. When you're coming up, when you're going down, when you're just covering your body, when you're using gamai for similar to Kihon number 1. So I'll move the Zuki out of the way so we can focus on this, but here. And here. And here. And here. So it's lifting, lowering, a toshi, yeah, down, or here. And even combinations, up and down. This is the most common one to use. Up and bringing it back down. Cover. And the cover is not done separately. Should be done with your body turn. Body turn. Also, you need to come up to meet the attacker's arm. So once more, going forward with your hip. Bring your arms up. Keeping the distance. Come back. Also, keep your arms up until you're actually back into your stance. Not dropping and coming back. Not too long. Back. Hold. Come back. You want to introduce your zanshin awareness. So zanshin is before the technique, during the technique. And this one makes sure you show after. The technique. So we need to practice Nagashizuki with our partner. So if you take fighting stance, yeah. So if Kash pushes in Gyakuzuki, yeah, then first of all we need to see it. We need to see that punch and move. We need to see his shoulder going. I'm trying to keep this hand as loose out the way. I'm trying to concentrate on this forward arm. So, you need to get this arm moving in quicker to do the punch. Yeah? Next one. Yeah, we need to do agi. So again, this needs to come up slowly. Up to do our agi. So, up. Next one, we need to do our toshi, which means we need to come up and down. Up, down. Then we need to do our gamai, similar to our Kihons, which is basically here, nice and relaxed, but just out. Next one is to come through. You can use a kette, a mai-geri, for this one. So if Kash pushes in and does the kette, yeah, we'll go in and use a lower cover. Once more for the mai-geri. So foot, and it's not. It sounds harsh, but it's touch turn. Touch turn. After all, the legs are bigger than the arms. So don't try and meet it with force. Try and redirect. Yeah, in. Turn your body. So. That's why we need our zanshin awareness before, so we can see whichever techniques come in. And also zanshin afterwards. To decide the next move. So an example of using your Nagashizuki is Kihons. This is Kihon number 7. Now I know some of you out there, you use mai-geri. The association that I'm with, we use mai-geri. So it gives us an opportunity to use this arm. So if we go through it slowly, so, yeah, lunges, jodan, cover. Because he's in fighting distance, I've just gone out to punching distance. So to do a kette Kash has to pull back to do maigeri. Okay, so start again. Here, as soon as I see him move, I move forward and turn. Yeah, right the way through. Cover, through. You can use shito, can use your fist. So once more, yeah, cover, and off, and out, and up. So the other thing with your Nagashizuki is making sure you go to the center. If you go to the side, it has a totally different effect. Same as before, lunge. If I go to the side, I'm not attacking. I've just gone round. I have to make sure that I go through to the center. One. Wish. Thank you. Wish. So another example for utilizing your Nagashizuki is in your pin and godan. So here. Here. So when you're going through your pin and godan, when you come to do this particular move, think of Nagashizuki. Right, it gives you the correct posture. This is not going away. I'm keeping my ground. I'm actually going into it, so everything's centered through here, not going back and then coming forward. Here. Also, when you're doing your Nagashizuki, try not to forget about your senju-sen. Oh, forget this arm at the moment. Just think about this one. Try and still do your zuki to the center line. Especially when you're doing a combination. A Renraku waza, when you're using Nagashizuki, is part of the Renraku waza. So try not to punch over here. Make sure you do your Nagash, but you're still doing your zuki to the center line. Think of an attack, not just karate attack, but also think of maybe a weapon, striking down, forward and move. So you're moving your body off this center line. Forward and move the body out. So if you want to, if you've got like a stick with some foam on, just in case you don't quite do it right, don't getting a sword out, please, don't do that. But coming down, forward and turn, through. When you start off with Junzuki notsukomi, then you're doing your Nagashizuki, you can see how the basic has actually transitioned through to making it a flowing move. And you can see where it's originated from to make it part of your techniques for when you come to do your sparring. Yeah, it doesn't take a leap of any sort of thought or any sort of diversion of that to make it basically, you can see where it's from. Yeah, as opposed to your Gyakuzuki notsukomi, that's a little bit more difficult, and we'll look at that in a future series. So I'd like to go through your Kette Junzuki. It's Kette Junzuki because it's two combinations put together. Yeah, it's not Gere Zuki, it's Kette Junzuki. So obviously take our Junzuki stance. When we do a Kette, we need to stand on this one leg because we're going to be standing balanced. So we need to try, because if I was normally doing a Kette, I would take tate-seishan, because from there it's straight. If we're in a Zenkutsu stance and we do a Kette, then it comes off the center. That's why if it's just a one Kette, then we take a tate-seishan. But here we're in a Junzuki stance. This is the basic form of building the technique up to a Maegeri Tomokomizuki or a Maegeri Nagashizuki. So when you're first learning, then, you know, to use a Zenkutsu stance, then that's fine. So you might see the Kette come slightly inboard. So what I'm trying to compensate for is to turn in my hip in, bending my knee, and this hip, it's not this separate pulling the heel in, it's combined with this. Here, here. So again, without my arms at the moment, hip transitioning the heel, not one without the hip. Here. And at the same time, as soon as you start doing the Kette, you need to start lifting this foot, because the Kette is starting as soon as you move this foot, or as soon as you start moving into your technique. And again, you should be rolling your hips in for the Kette. So, heel, hips, heel, lift. I've seen so many people compromise the Kette because they're standing in this position rather than a fighting stance. So, too many times I've tried to keep this and not move the hip. This isn't flowing. This is my hip keeping straight because this arm's out. Most probably their instructor says you've got to kick underneath the fist. Yeah, but the fist can move. The hip can move. I've kept my fist there in the center, but all I need to do is just relax this arm. Relax it. Not keep it rigid. You're compromising the Kette. These are two techniques that are put together. Not one technique where you got 30% of a Maegeri and 70% of a punch. It should be 100% of Maegeri and 100% of Junzuki. Not compromising one or the other. So you need to relax. Relax, let your body move into a natural position for the Maegeri. Roll your hip in. Then do a good Zuki. Also, when you're doing the Zuki, seeing a lot of this. They do the kick and just basically drop down. Your Zuki, your Junzuki, is a projection forward of your body. A Junzuki is not this. Just dropping your foot down. It is your body projecting forward. So when it comes to Kette Junzuki, kick, just get that push, just that glide in your body forward. So you haven't compromised the Zuki with just putting your foot down on the maigeri. So maigeri, you drop it down. On this maigeri, 1, get it back to the center. Then kamishite, rice paper thickness. So it's 2 techniques, one's not compromising the other. Yeah, you're working with your body, but you have to put your body in the right place, not force it. So again, heel, knee, knee, hip, heel. Then your Junzuki, with it projecting forward. Whoosh. So the next natural progression from Kette Junzuki is maigeri tomokomazuki. So this time we can take tate seishan stance. Because we want to walk, we want to progress along the center line. So all the principles about a maigeri. Then forward and push to get your projection going forward for the tomokomazuki. I'll explain why in a sec. So here, there are 2 schools of thought. One, you change your guard, and then you punch from, you do your zuki from here. The other one, which I prefer, is I don't change the guard. I keep this guard here. And then I use my hip with the torsion going in. So here, here, maigeri, and push forward. The reason why we need to push forward is to do with mai and ma'ai, distance. Okay, so with the help with Kash, I'm going to try and describe or make you try to describe the reason why we need to push forward after the maigeri when you're doing maigeri tomokomazuki. So if we go into our fighting stance, yeah, I want to push forward because we're in fighting distance. I need to push forward to go into my maigeri, to go into keri distance. If I land and just zuki here, which looks great when you're just doing a renraku waza, but as soon as you put somebody in front of you, you totally understand now why you need to push forward to get into your zuki distance. So, I push forward, maigeri. I need to then push forward to get into my zuki distance. Let's show you again. So here, push forward, moves back. Then, that's quite a distance, but it doesn't matter. Then you push forward and out. Whoosh. That was quite good because that made me work for my tomokomazuki. And that's what you need to do. You need to adjust your distances, not just keep to, one particular distance. Yeah, because you can fight in distance. The other thing is you can do this really with Nagashizuki, but you can try it here. It's come up, so we'll do it here. So from here, pushing forward. Yeah, now if you stop where you are, okay, so here, Kash knows I can actually reach him from here. Stop where you are. I'm not going to punch you, okay, but here. Now take a little bit more of a distance back. Now it's a little bit more challenging. Yeah, I've got to really push, not this. That shortens my range and makes me very vulnerable. So I need to push here. And I can still quite comfortably do the zuki. Stop there. Now I'm back here, so Kash thinks, nah, he ain't going to punch me from here. You need to try this. But again, down and push forward. Here. Believe it or not, I just reached you. Okay? Okay, we're on the limits now, but totally does not believe that I'm going to be able to punch him. So, here, push with your hip. Make sure you bring your back leg with you. Yeah? And push. Push. I'm not doing another one. Thank you. So when you're doing your Tomokomizuki, just try that. Try different distances. Yeah, find out where your extremities are. Because it's a lot further than you think. Yeah? Push. Thank you. Push. Okay, so I'd like to go through Kette, Junzuki, notsukomi. So, again, be aware of your shizenta, your yoi. Yeah? Through for your, I'll use open-handed. Yeah? Junzuki, notsukomi. So, it's a little bit more awkward because you need to come around your center. So you definitely need to alter your body position and your hip position by moving your hip and your heel. So by moving your hip, you are taking your head and your body this way over this, which will be the center. We're already on the center line. We know this is on the center line. To do your Kette. Then we need the projection again. But we need to still consider the back foot because the back foot still needs to move. So too many people go here and it ends up at the back. So after your maigeri, down and consider this movement of the back foot. Here. Junzuki notsukomi, your hips pulled in. So we're going to take the hip forward. I'll just open my hands. We're going to take the hip forward. Because I'm moving forward, I want to lift the back foot into the maigeri position. Not coming straight up, trying to keep low. Soft knee. Through. Moving the back foot with the hikite. And again, pulling this hip back to take your body away, but your zuki forward. So, round, centralize yourself. Do the maigeri, then forward. So I'll do the maigeri this time. Not this. Not turning your foot out, but pulling your heel in. You've got to think about your center of gravity and your hip. It's a complex technique, Junzuki notsukomi. When you start putting the kette in there, there's other things to consider. Where am I going to centralize myself? How am I going to do that? How am I going to keep my posture? How am I going to put the attack back in? So, not easy. You need to consider those things. Everything is, you can resolve issues by thinking about how you're doing it. If you're losing your balance, try and slow the technique down and go, where am I losing it? Now, how do I resolve that? Think about your center keeping the knees down, rolling the hip in, keeping low, and punching up. Whoosh. So, Kette, Junzuki, notsukomi is your basic for my getting Nagashizuki. Again, it's from your tate seishan. Yeah. Again, you can either change your guard or you can leave it here, but keep considering that center line. And maigiri, and forward. Not turning, not moving the foot across. Going forward, not punching over there, but punching straight. And moving your body out the way. And back. Keeping low. Maigiri. Nagashizuki. Come back. Forward. Maigiri. Nagashizuki. Whoosh. Right. So, when you're trying to practice this with a partner, you've obviously got to think about my and my I, but also the main thing to get out of this is that the direction of the Zuki. So if I can describe here, so whoosh. So I push in. I need to push in because the my. Pushing in, obviously there's this hand there, so I've got to think about this. But I want the punch to come up. So you've still got to be low, coming up. Not pushing back and trying to come straight on. You need to be coming underneath and punching up. So once more. Push forward to do the maigiri. Then push forward again, coming up underneath. And then make sure you're covering. Gyakuzuki notsukomi. Again, unique to Wado-Ryu. This is the one that I thought was, how do I take that forward into like Junzuki notsukomi, where it became a Nagashizuki, it became part of the sparring. Yeah? And it's a difficult one to understand. Where do I take it to? Because a basic technique needs to be taken through into, it needs to be evolved. So hopefully we'll talk about that as we're going through, and maybe come up with a few examples. Yeah, they're obviously, you already do a lot of them, but you don't see them. It's so into doing the technique and trying to learn that technique, but you don't see the Gyakuzuki notsukomi within it. So maybe I can highlight that to you. So let's go through Gyakuzuki notsukomi. Gyakuzuki notsukomi has similar sort of principles to Junzuki notsukomi, where you need to use your hip, not your back, but your movement from the hip. You also need to understand it's Junzuki is not this. Junzuki is moving this hip across. Right? Gyakuzuki, I've got this angle and this angle. So we need to remember that when we're doing Gyakuzuki notsukomi. It doesn't change because we are punching to the tanden. You need to keep that in your mind, that it's a Gyakuzuki, and the basic principle, the hip, this angle, and this angle. The only thing that changes is the target, and you do that by moving your hip. So let's talk about the stance. stance is very much like Yoko Seishan, but it's a bit bigger. It's a basic version of Yoko Seishan. So, Junzuki, hip, sonobade. Just going to drop my arm so we can talk about the stance. Same principle. We drop in. Can you see where my center is? It's moved to here. So therefore I should be able to move this leg. When I pull this hip in, pull the heel in, I should be working around my center of gravity. So, here, cover, out. Similar, going to Shikidachi, foot turned in. Then Zuki. Think about your Gyakuzuki, but you're using this hip to pull down. If I leave my arm here and just move my hip, it should be Gyakuzuki Chudan. But all I'm doing is here. After all, you've developed the muscle memory for Gyakuzuki. It's a powerful Zuki. So why should you all of a sudden start changing it to this? Also, it's not very stable, and I'll try and demonstrate that after. Yeah, so think about this hip and the punch and Chudan. So, hip, heel comes in, through, cover the groin. The foot, if you bring your foot up here, that's Madonna, that's waist. You're just covering your groin. So all you need to do is bring your thigh in, your knee, and back out. Grip in, turn the foot in. Now, pull the foot. Hip, back, ball. When I do this, as soon as this heel's coming in, this should be free to move, and move quickly. Not dragging. That's got no life in it, it's got no meaning. Should be up through, back down. So let's put those two together. To keep Gyakuzuki notsukomi, Yoko Seishan, same principles, then use your ball of the foot. Use the ball of your foot. Wish. So with Kette Junzuki notsukomi, we took it to my getting Nagashizuki. When you've got Gyakuzuki notsukomi, this is where people have problems taking it through to your actual fighting. So when you think of your Gyakuzuki notsukomi or your Kette Gyakuzuki notsukomi, it's a basic way of understanding to drop and punch, especially from a Furiken. Yeah, okay, there's other ways to move back or side, but the other way is to drop and punch. And you can see the Gyakuzuki notsukomi. Yeah, you drop, you turn the foot to use your hip and your body to punch down. So, we're going to go through some examples of using Gyakuzuki notsukomi with Kash. Then also we'll go on to have a look, see where we see it in kata as well. So try and incorporate Gyakuzuki Notsukame into your, realize where it is, especially in your Kihons as well. We'll give a demonstration of your Kihon number 1. So yeah, let's progress it. So what I'd like to do is try and give you some pairs work that will help you with the Gyakuzuki Notsukame, about this soft knees, which Shimizu Sensei is always on about, having soft knees to drop. Because the attack is not always front, back, side, 45 degrees, but it's also above and also below. So you need that up and that down. So this is dropping. And also to move your body to the side. So Gyakuzuki Notsukame is a basic way of dropping your weight and moving to the side. So if you have your partner and they go forward and do a furiken, okay, start off with that. You drop here. You're going through. Not just punching straight, but this hip is going through. Yeah, once more. So I drop and I punch. And I can punch again. You're dropping down, sidestepping. Yeah, getting your, not 50-50, 50%, 50%, but this 70% 30 to get your hip to be going through. So with this side step and going through, it doesn't always have to be tanden. It can be chudan. It can be godan. So when you're practicing Gyakuzuki Notsukame, yeah, sure, tanden, but chudan. And still with the hip, jodan. So when you're doing your basics, maybe try doing Gyakuzuki Notsukame but using chudan. Gyakuzuki Notsukame doing jodan. Don't just keep it to tanden all the way. That's the traditional. Yes, and that's what you most really need for your gradients, but try chudan, try jodan. Same with Junzuki Notsukame. Junzuki Notsukame jodan, that's the normal. But you can use chudan and you can use gidan, which I'll try and demonstrate with Junzuki Notsukame gidan in a kata. Right? So Gyakuzuki Notsukame, where do we see it in kata? Wanshu. There are so many different ways I've seen wanshu being performed. All right, so don't get hung up on this. It's just a suggestion. All right, so again, if your instructor says that's not wanshu, that's fine. But it's an example of dropping, moving your weight and punching, and introducing your Gyakuzuki Notsukame. So practice fighting stance. Yes, as they lunge, obviously this comes in. This comes in. But as we are dropping, this punch goes down. Okay, so we want to use this side step. We want to have a cover, and we want to be using Gyakuzuki Notsukame. So if you're doing wanshu, slight variation, depends what your style wants the beginning of wants to perform. But it's a good way of sidestepping, covering, and doing your Gyakuzuki Notsukame. It's one way of practicing it. I'd like to talk about Kette Gyakuzuki Notsukame. Quite an awkward technique, unless you accept that, like Junzuki, not Kette Junzuki notsukomi, that you shouldn't be constrained by a residual zuki. You've finished that zuki, it's lived its life, it's done its technique. It's not really required anymore. Okay, the next one is the next Gyakuzuki, or the next zuki is the one that should be interested. But the kette, the keri, needs to have its own life. So, what do I mean by that? Seen so many times people doing this. I think this stems over from many, many years ago when somebody says you need to do your keri, kick underneath your fist. So it lost all its context. That's not a natural maigeri. I can't move, physically can't move. It's very, unless you're elastic, yeah, maybe you got away with it, okay? But you need to have the maigeri to have its life and then create another zuki. So, yes, keep low, because the target, even for the maigeri, tanden. So it doesn't mean you can kick higher if you want, give you some agility, but relax, let your hip come through. Think about your center, yeah? Do your maigeri with your hip. Then create the Gyakuzuki. And you can only do that if you're nice and relaxed and not so conscious about keeping this arm where it is. It's had its life. Don't let it interfere with anything else. Just let it move with the body. Let it move with the body, not rigid. Yeah, it's a new maigeri. Don't stop it. It's a new child. Don't stop it. Yes, correct it if it's wrong, but hip. Whoosh. Right. So, with Kash, I'd like to show you some do's and don'ts with Gyakuzuki notsukomi. So if I get Kash to take his Gyakuzuki notsukomi, they'll be further back. So you've got your heel and toe in line. So maybe a little bit more. Which again, yoko seishan, this is the principle. Heel and toe in line. Yeah? Sit down. See, so many people, can you see this overreach? And it's not, if you straighten your back, that's not Gyakuzuki position, is it? So here, not really strong. Not that you need to be tensed, but it needs to have a natural positive posture. So if now we take Gyakuzuki and from the hip to do the tsukami. Now. Yeah, now. You can totally see the difference with the posture, the Gyakuzuki position. Yeah, he's got here and also here. As soon as he goes to this, don't take much at all. It's just not there. It looks great, looks very exaggerated, but no. So keep to your Gyakuzuki chew down, and with your hip, come down. Don't overreach. Yeah, but here, yeah. Yeah, man. Oish. So now I'd like to talk about where you're focusing, the Kette and the Zuki too. So if you take fighting stance, yeah. So Gyakuzuki notsukomi, it's to tanden, just below the belt, not to the groin, to here, down. Now just touch this hip down. And when you do your Kette, it should be here, nice and relaxed. Okay, so somewhere else that you can practice your Gyakuzuki notsukomi, and in Wado-Ryu we have the Kihons, and this in particular is Kihon number 1. So maybe you've not thought about Gyakuzuki notsukomi on this and just thought it was a Gyakuzuki, but really you need to think about your Gyakuzuki notsukomi because it's relevant to your body position, your head position, stance, relative to where that person is. Yeah, and the mai with your feet in relationship to their stance. Yeah, so yeah, we'll go through it slowly, but here we go. Kihon number 1. So yeah. So woo. So Junzuki notsukomi. Oh, through. My head's down, being covered. That's where I need to go. Stop where you are. Yeah. So I need to push and take my body in. But it's not nailed to the floor. Yeah, I'm going in and it's coming up. Yeah, and here. Through. And my head's down. I can still look up, but I don't do this. I can still look up. So again, slowly. Yeah, lunge. He's moved position. I've got a punch here. So I'm going through. Body's coming in for the Gyakuzuki. Body's got to move forward, so the back leg has got to move in to take the weight forward. Here. So hopefully you can see the Gyakuzuki notsukomi taking effect on this technique. Good, Nash? You sure? Okay, so 1 and 2. Almost got you. So for Kash to do a good Kihon number 1, I have to do my technique correctly. I'm not doing him any favours by not doing a correct Junzuki notsukomi and the Gyakuzuki notsukomi, yeah, to a full intent. Obviously, when you're just learning, you're picking up the technique, but then you have to do it good, Nash, yeah, with your ki, with your spirit. Wish. As an exercise and to relate your stance to the uke, this is quite a good exercise. I quite like this exercise because you've got to forget the 4 walls around you. You have to just focus on the uke. And your stance is affected by that. So, if I can demonstrate, so we start off by dropping and doing the Gyakuzuki notsukomi. Then we're going to come up and we're going to go round, round, round to our Junzuki notsukomi. Now I've got to think of my Mai and my Gyakuzuki notsukomi in relationship to the ukiyo. So again, punch. It can be Judan, Gidan. Now again, I'm moving round to Junzuki notsukomi stance. I'm not losing any distance. I'm going in again. Hip, Junzuki notsukomi stance. Moving in and round. And Jun notsukomi. Then in again. I'm forgetting the four walls. I'm just using my Gyakuzuki notsukomi stance in relationship to his position. Up. Notsukomi stance. In again. Gyakuzuki notsukomi stance. Jun. I'm not losing any distance with my body. Wish. Hey. One day you can do it to me. Ready. So, Gyakuzuki, Junzuki notsukomi. Mai and relationship. Junzuki notsukomi. Gyakuzuki notsukomi. Jun notsukomi. So you're moving round. And he's the center of the universe. Not the four walls, but relationship to them. So it's a good way of practicing Gyakuzuki notsukomi, Junzuki notsukomi, Ma'ai. Wish. So the exercise that we've been doing, in some ways it shows how Gyakuzuki notsukomi can be relatively quick, and it can also have the adverse, almost an adverse effect on Junzuki notsukomi. Not that I'm worried about the Junzuki notsukomi part, but it's this realization that your Gyakuzuki notsukomi, instead of it being quite a long, I wouldn't say laborious, but a long time-wise and technically difficult to do correctly, how it shows that it can be quite quick. And you see that in our Kihon number 1 that we've demonstrated, and we can touch on that one again just to show you, right? But also on this arms up. So I drop and I punch and I come round with this. Now really, for Gyakuzuki notsukomi, it's quite quick. This is quite quick. This is takes a bit longer. So obviously it depends what exercise you're doing, but it gives you that confidence that Gyakuzuki notsukomi can be a quick basic, quick zuki. Right? So don't take for granted that Gyakuzuki is a slow technique. It is a quick technique in the right circumstances. So when you're doing Gyakuzuki notsukomi in your basics and your zuki waza, try and give it the respect that it deserves. But learning to drop and punching. Yeah, not Gyakuzuki notsukomi again. Oh no, not Kette Gyakuzuki notsukomi. Yeah, that means we've got to come up, we've got to get down, respect it, respect everyone. And bear in mind, these techniques are unique to Wado. If you're from a different style, it might be worth having a go at them. See where it takes you. So, yeah, thank you for letting me punch you. Okay. Ready? Oish. Oish.
Hello and welcome to this section of the Wado Benkyo Kihon Fundamental series. Today we're going to have a look at some techniques peculiar to Wado-Ryu, Junzuki, notsukomi, Gyakuzuki, notsukomi, and trying to work them into a more practical application. As Kihon, they're quite sort of challenging and they look a little bit odd and feel a little bit odd, but they can be very, very useful if you can put them into application. And as well as looking at the notsukomi techniques, we'll also look at using Kette to kick first, because that obviously gives you extended range, but it is again complicated when using notsukomi techniques. You may or may not have seen already a Wado-Ryu Benkyo website. Fantastic resource, lots of information on upcoming courses. If you're UK based, it'd be great if you want to come along, feel free. It'd be nice to meet you, nice to see you. There is a free newsletter associated with the website. Get onto the website, get signed up. Some really interesting articles and good information on the newsletter. But there's also a glossary, and that will be useful. There'll be lots of terms that will get used today you may not have heard before, or you want more information on, and there's a really good glossary at the back so you can do your own research on the back of what you might learn from this video. So make use of the website, and we'll put a link in the description box below so you can link straight. I think earlier this week we're filming on Sunday the 7th of February, and I think it was earlier this week we hit 7,000 subscribers. So all of you who have subscribed, thank you very much. When we started this a few years ago, 7,000 was just way out there. That was, seemed unachievable, but now it's here. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, think about hitting the subscribe button. It costs you nothing, and you get informed when there's a new video, and it'd be great to have you on board as well. So thank you very much for the 7,000 subs. And you may have noticed, if you're paying attention, we're not in the usual location. When Sensei Roger did the first part of this video, I'd got this flu that was going around the world, so I was too ill to film. So we're doing this now in the new Shinkido martial arts dojo. We've been here about 6 weeks. And as a benefit to me, this is only 10 minutes from home. So we're going to go back a little bit old school with this. When we were doing the kata series, we used to have a series of headers, and then we would fill in the details of each subject. So we'll do the same again with this. So the first header will be dosa. And like a lot of Japanese sort of terms, depending on its context and how the kanji is written, it has different meanings. But one of them is like essential or fundamental principles. So we'll look at notsukomi and combinations and things like that as essential and fundamental principles. But dosa can also mean, depending on context, like a heavy thud, and that will play into where we're trying to go with this. It's trying to create conditions within the body where we're not relying on muscular strength, we're relying on something more complicated, connectivity within the body, and that changes the output that you get. The second header will be the various muscle chains. This is a little bit more advanced, but there are muscle chains that you really need to use within your body to get the best effects. They are the deep front line and the spiral lines. And what we'll try and do in the edit is we'll put up images of the deep front lines and the spiral lines, just to show you a physical representation of where they are within the body. But they become crucial as you go through your levels of experience. Datsu and Batsu Ryoku. And again, I mentioned the website and the glossary. You can go in there and read more about those subjects. But they are very important. It's a state of relaxation and letting go, but it's also a state where you are using these internal muscle chains and connections to get the maximum effect. And that's a more experienced level, but if you start thinking about it as a yellow belt, orange belt, by the time you get to Dan grade, you should be sort of well versed in it. Other terms that you'll be helpful to have a look in the glossary are terms like ryusui, hado, shizumu, and omomi. And we'll cover those in a little bit more depth. And then finally, we'll have a look at some drills you can create for yourself, so with your training partner or even solo drill, and practice these techniques in a more realistic interpretation rather than being fixed, rigid Kihon. They start to become a little bit more fluid and a bit more alive. So we'll show you some examples of that to finish. So dosa, fundamental Kihon and fundamental principles. These are the building blocks, the things you repeat multiple times until they become ingrained. Kihon Fundamentals, the creator of Shotokan style karate, he said that there are no stances in karate. Well, beginners have stances, advanced students have natural postures. And by natural postures, he was saying you've done something so many times, it's now your natural state. You don't have to think about it. You automatically assume that posture. And there is an interesting thing I've come across recently, Hebb's law. A neuroscientist named Donald Hebb. And he's, a brief summary is that cells that fire together wire together. So if you repeat a technique or a motion multiple times, to start with its individual neurons firing to make the movement, make the technique, eventually by repetition those neurons will form new bridges. So when you see really advanced practitioners and they're doing techniques at a fantastic level and it looks like no effort at all, that's because these neurons have wired together through multiple repetition. So dosa is essential. There's no shortcuts. You have to make the movements multiple times, repeat the movements multiple times. But they must be done correctly. If you repeat a poor quality movement or an incorrect movement multiple times, it's always going to be incorrect or poor quality. And there's a scheme that syllabuses tend to go through. To start with, for punching techniques, you might do it from Kibadachi, and you're checking that your arms are not chicken winging, or that your hikite is correct, it's not sticking out, so you're doing it correctly. And then eventually that moves into Junzuki. So you've moved from a static position, trying to be correct, to a dynamic movement and still trying to be correct. You have to go through that process. That then translates into your kata. If you're chicken winging in Kibadachi, you'll be chicken winging in Kihon, and you'll be chicken winging in your kata. So you've got to get it right to start with before you can progress it through. Sensei Roger's done lots of things with Venn diagrams about Kihon, kata, partner work, kumite, and in the middle is essentially the essence of karate. So that is something that you need to consider. The skill sets you're learning in Kihon need to be translated into kata, into partner work, and eventually into kumite. So there's no shortcut for this, sadly. You've just got to do it, and like I say, the cells that fire together eventually wire together. So that's like a definition of dosa, and if you look in the glossary section of the website, you can find some more information in there. When we're making movements, we're obviously using muscles, but we're not using them on an individual level. And there are, within the body, chains of muscles. And two of the most important ones are the deep front lines and the spiral lines. The deep front lines start at your temples, run down your body, down your legs, and they form the adductor muscles inside the thigh, all the way down, and then cover your feet. So that's a very important muscle chain because it's connecting you all the way from the floor, your connection to the ground, to your head. The other one is the spiral lines. So the left spiral line starts at your neck, goes round your back, under your right armpit, across your body and down. And opposite side, across, body, down. So these are important. The way we describe it here in the dojo is your body is like a bow. In its normal condition, there's no energy in a bow. It's just relaxed and in its normal state. But when you pull the drawstring back, you curve the bow. And the bow doesn't want to be curved, it wants to release back to its natural state. So what we're trying to do is do the same with the body. So the deep front line, if you imagine somebody's got you by the hair and you're just lifting your head up. It's not a big forced movement, but just lifting you by the hair. And then if you think of your pelvis just dropping, imagine it, your spine is just being pulled. So that is like putting tension in the bow. Now with the bow and arrow, when you release the bow and release the energy, the arrow flies. What we're trying to do is create this energy within the body, but it's the arm or the leg that flies. I mentioned the adductors. They form part of the deep front line. They're essential in making your hips rotate. We consciously use those to make movement. So if we're trying to achieve a Gyaku movement, we contract the front adductor muscle, try and pull it into the groin. The rear one, we push down to the knee. So that isn't me just turning my hips. That's a contraction of this leg and an expansion of that leg. And that drives the hips. When you combine that with Tenshi, heaven and earth, the head up and the tailbone down, you're now connected from the floor to the top of your head and engaged via the adductors. If you want a front punch, a jump punch, you reverse that push-pull. Contract this side, expand that side, and the body goes out. So these are now not random movements. These are control movements using muscle chains within the body. The spiral lines are used in conjunction with a technique called Tai no Shinshuku, which means expansion and contraction of the body. And again, have a look at the glossary section for more detail. But essentially, you've got big muscles in the front of the chest, big muscles in the back. So if you're performing Goiwanuke, you can either just do it with your arm, or you can use your body to expand and contract. So you're now using much more muscle mass and much more muscle chains, and they're acting like the bow. When you compress in, your body doesn't want to be in that position. It wants to return to its normal position. So we're creating this free energy within the body, this elastic energy, which gives you snap within the technique. And there is an elastic limit. That's about the elastic limit. Now you can go past, but you're forcing mechanically. So part of the learning process is to find that elastic limit. One way, the other way. One way, the other way. So you're getting this constant expansion and contraction of the body. These muscle fibres creating energy, releasing energy. And that's something only you can do. It's your body, it's unique, it's one of a kind. So you need to find your natural elastic limits. But they are crucial for speed, and certainly when you start getting older and you haven't got that youthful muscular strength, you need to find these to be able to maintain a standard. So Tai no Shinshuku is essential in all your techniques. Activating muscle chains is really important. And when you find you do, you'll find that your speed and your power will improve substantially. You're not relying on old school sort of mass and weight and big heavy technique. You can generate power in very small movements. So other terms that, again, use the glossary. It's a fantastic resource on the website. Ryusui. Ryusui is to flow, to be like water. You're not making big static movements, you're moving smoothly. But as you're moving smoothly, you are still with this connected state. I've still got this tenshi, heaven and earth. The spine is still engaged, but I'm trying to move smoothly but maintain this engagement. So this is where it gets tricky, is having a certain amount of tension within the body, of muscle chains, but to be able to keep the rest of the body relaxed. And this ties into this idea of Datsu-ryoku and Batsu-ryoku. One of the interpretations of Datsu-ryoku is lifelessness. So there's no tension in anything. But as you know, if you've ever seen anybody pass out or faint, they become so lifeless they collapse on the floor because there's no muscular structure. So what you're trying to achieve is the feeling of lifelessness and relaxation, but complementing it with Batsu-ryoku. And Batsu-ryoku is the selective turning on and off of muscle chains. You turn them on when you need them, you turn them off when you're finished. You're not constantly moving under this state of tension. Some of the Okinawan systems, Goju-ryu and styles like that, they move under permanent tension. But for Wado, it's a very different thing. You need to be able to switch muscle chains and tension on and off as and when you need it. So Datsu-ryoku, Batsu-ryoku, two sides of a coin. You need the relaxation in your arms so your arms can move quickly, but you've got the tension within the body to drive the technique forward. This bow staff to create energy, but the shoulders and the arms are relaxed, so you're not tense all the way through. So complicated techniques, not simple things, and it takes a long time, and it probably takes getting old, to be fair, to let go. You know, when you're 25 and you're all this sort of stuff means nothing. When you're 65, then you think, yeah, if I'm going to continue doing this, I've got to explore this. So, you know, if you're 25 and you look into the future, start exploring Datsu-ryoku, Batsu-ryoku, techniques like this. Another technique, and again refers to the glossary, Hado. It's like to flow, to let techniques flow through. And we're saying that the deep front line connects your feet to your head. So if you're making a technique, it's coming up from the floor through the body and eventually leaving the arm. So it's not staccato movements. It's got to flow as a whole through the body. Let the technique flow out. So if you find sticky points in the movement, if you feel like your hip joint is snagging a bit, or your knees, there's something going wrong, you need to let the whole thing as one flow. So again, that's something, and if you can video yourself, you'll probably see the sticky points. So something you can work on, and it's a lifelong progress. Shizumu. Shizumu is dropping. It's a classic sort of technique to drop. Gravity and drop. Sensei Schmitz, his karate was very much dropping, using that free energy you get from gravity. Where you can take it, and it's something we practice here, is raising and lowering the centre. You can lift your centre up, and I'll exaggerate it, lift the centre up and then let it drop. Imagine dropping a basketball into a hoop. So the centre can come up and then drop. And I'm certainly not there. is where you want to go eventually, is make that movement the size of a pea internally. So it's very tiny movement, and you watch these old masters in their 80s and 90s and they appear to be doing nothing, but it's all happening inside. So depending on, if you're making a big drop mechanically or internally, you're raising and lowering your centre. It's Shizumu, it's dropping that centre to grab free energy from gravity. Undermomi, in the kata series, we talked about Mochimi, which is the Okinawan version. And it's this sort of heaviness. We mentioned, if somebody's passed out and they've collapsed on the floor, you try to move them, and even if they're not a big person, they feel immensely heavy. It's referred to as a dead weight. So a momi is what you're trying to do. The more you physically tense up, the lighter you become, because you're holding yourself up. But if you can get this relaxed heaviness, this drop in, this sink in the centre, you get this immense power from seemingly nothing. So that's a momi or mochimi. So these are concepts that you need to sort of look at and think about and work on, and then try and add them into your Kihon, kata, partner work. The stages beginners go through, because they're untrained, and then you where is physical power. Where you're eventually trying to go is this Hado. You're moving from the centre. Ryū, you flow through, and then the technique releases. So there's no tension except when you want it. You flow through, gone. And that's the progress you're trying to make with all your techniques. Kihon, take that into kata, take that into partner work, take that into your kumite. So a lot going on. Sooner you can research it, try it out, and try and incorporate it into your training, the better. So what we'll look at in this video is, although it's Kihon Fundamentals, it doesn't mean basic. We'll look at some quite advanced principles that if you're yellow belt, orange belt, green belt, probably it's not something you need to be worrying about at the moment, but as you're progressing up, certainly getting towards first dan and past first dan, these are going to become more and more important. So if they're on your radar now, it's going to be no great surprise when you actually need them. If you're suddenly coming to training one day and your sensei says, right, today you need to worry about Shizumu, and it's like, so just let it wash over you at the moment. Use the website, use the resources, think about it. But this is for students who are sort of pushing through the experience levels and pushing through the grades that might find useful. We talked about the continuity, because we're in a different dojo. Because we're in the middle of an English winter, you might have noticed the light suddenly changed because it's gone dark. So if you're looking at us and we look like we're sort of 15 miles away, that's because of the lighting. With all of these, we mentioned the progression from Kihon, where you're trying to make everything as correct as possible. You take that into kata, which then gives you dynamic movement and changes of direction with the techniques. Then you need to take it into partner work. Your partner work, you're having to learn distance, timing, and other important concepts that fall within it. So we're going to have a look at the notsukomi techniques, but done as a more practical and sparring type technique. So if we look at it to start with, like an ippon kumite, where there's a single attack, we make a single counter attack. So Simon has very kindly offered to be okay for this one, so thanks Simon. So for example, he's going to push in and lunge. So we're going to move to the side and take our Gyakuzuki notsukomi stance. It doesn't have to be quite so formal as you're performing Kihon, but the big thing is you're taking your head away from the centre line, but you're still facing in this direction so you can lower into your punch. We talked about Shizumu, this dropping. It's not step, turn the hips, it's turn the hips till we reach the elastic point, then the technique goes out. And we want this omomi, we want this sticky heaviness, but then gone. We're not holding the position, gone. The other concept to consider is kobuitai, attacking while defending, defending while attacking. So if Simon does the attack, if I do this as Kihon and use a hikite, I'm open. So I want to cover. I want to make sure that he can't counter strike with his hand. So we've gone from Kihon to now practical kobuitai. So once you've practiced that and you're comfortable with that, you're using your body, you're dropping, striking, then you can make it into like a two-step sparring. So we can add Junzuki notsukomi. So as the attack comes in, we drop, cover, cover, turn, use this torsion, this nigiri to strike. Yeah. So once more, as he comes in, we drop, cover, cover, turn, torque, strike, and cover again. And then we can step out. So now we've got practical techniques. We're still trying to keep the idea of the Kihon and all the principles just a little bit more realistic. We're not using hikites, we're using guards and covers. And then eventually you can, when we did the kata series, we talked about kata-based sparring, where you take sections of the kata and you apply them as fighting techniques. You're simulating kumite without actually the chaos of a completely unscripted kumite. So with this, we could do the same, but we could like we're sparring. Yeah. So you might throw him a few feints so he thinks you're going to keep going back, then strike. So we're sparring, there's feints and counter strikes, and so to start with, I was trying to lure him in. You know, he thinks he's doing all right, and I'm just going to keep going backwards, and then we strike. So things you can practice, things you can try. And then part of this is the Kette, the kick first. So we can take these basic Kihons and make it into a Renzoku type waza, where the opponent is actually going to behave like a real opponent. He's not particularly going to just stand there and let me throw strikes. So for example, sticking with this, he comes in, we strike. As I try to counter punch, he steps. So now I can add the kick. If he does a double step, as if he's trying to avoid the first kick, we can avoid 1, 2, go again. So we both know what's happening, we both know what's going on, so we're minimising the chance of injury. It's not chaotic like actual kumite, but it's more realistic. You can get a flow going, you can get some speed going, you can throw some dummies, and just have some fun with it, but you're still learning distance, timing and discipline within a safe structure.